What's up, everybody? Derek Anderson, the DA. Yeah, let's talk about this concept of the Marvel Cinematic Universe getting rebooted. This is something that's been discussed over the last couple of years, for sure, just because of the way the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going right now. The MCU is completely off the rails. You know, Secret Invasion, we just saw what a dumpster fire that thing was. We got the Marvels coming up next. That looks like a dumpster fire. And at some point in time, you know, it's like, hey, what are we doing here? Why are we still rolling out this garbage to the masses and expecting anything less than laughter and ridicule and disrespect coming back our direction? You know, why are we doing this? Let's go ahead, just stop what we're doing because we're about to ruin the image and the style that we're used to. Let's go ahead and just reboot this sucker, right? That's what most people are saying. You can see even the Arrowverse creator, right, or co-creator, believes that Marvel should reboot the MCU, prune the tree. And what he's talking about is, hey, we need to cut off some of these branches of the MCU that are going absolutely nowhere, right? Some of these things are just going nowhere. There's no reason to keep these storylines continuing, like the Eternals. What the hell is going on with that? What is the purpose of the Eternals? Why is it here? I've been hearing rumors of an Eternals too. Why? Nobody cares. That movie bombed in the box office. Cut that branch off, okay? Get rid of that sucker. Poof. Out of here. And then we'll move on with the things that are going to matter, like the Fantastic Four, like the X-Men, you know, put our time and energy into that. That's what Marc Guggenheim is basically saying. Let's go ahead and read what he's talking about. So Marc Guggenheim, one of the heads of CW's wildly popular Arrowverse, offered his perspective on the Marvel Cinematic Universe, stating he believes the franchise needs to shrink if it wants to continue. Yeah, now, let's just keep this in mind. When they say the wildly popular Arrowverse, that was wildly popular for about a couple of years. And then after that, it too just went completely off the rails, you know. But, you know, nevertheless, this guy has shepherded a cinematic universe. Let's see what perspective he has on this particular situation. Speaking on the Arthi and Shriram show, I guess, Guggenheim explained that he agrees with current Disney CEO Bob Iger that Marvel needs to slow down its content production, adding that he believes the MCU is due for a Crisis on Infinite Earths-like event that can reduce the number of plot threads. Each of these movies in phases 1 through 3, they all stood on their own. Look, I get it. I think honestly what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going through right now is the same discovery that Marvel Print Universe and the DC Print Universe also went through, Guggenheim explained. Which is, I think of these universes like ships. And the longer a ship sails, the more barnacles get attached to its hull, and the more that weighs down the ship, and the more it affects how fast the ship can move through the water. See? Look, guys, he's not wrong about this, okay? He's not wrong about how weighty the MCU feels in terms of it feels weighted down. You know, it feels like it's just drowning under its own weight of all the stuff that they got going on, all the different TV shows and the different plot threads. Like, what's going on with Moon Knight? Who the hell knows what's going on with Moon Knight? That was a show they made. It's sitting out there. What's up with this Kate Bishop chick? You know, like I just said, what's up with the Eternals? You know, what do we need to focus on? It just seems like it's a lot of garbage, right? But what's weighing the MCU down more than all of these stories, okay? What's weighing the MCU down is the characters. Isn't necessarily the acting, it isn't the directing, it's the writing. And specifically the writing of bad characters. Characters that nobody can connect to. Characters that nobody gives a damn about. Characters that are so steeped in woke ideology that that's the only thing that they really are about. They're just about the ideology, and they're not like human beings, okay? They're not like actual characters that we can relate to. They're just like ideals, you know, like Carol Danvers is just like this ideal of feminism. What is her character? Nobody knows, nobody cares. You know, you got to give me a character that I can sink my teeth into, that I'm like, hey, you know what? I like this character. This character is somebody that I can relate to. Because believe it or not, you can actually ruin a very, very good story with a terribly written main character. Or on the flip side, you can take a regular, average kind of ordinary story and you can elevate that with an excellently written character. And a character that just captures your imagination, makes you love that character right off the bat. Before anything, like if you go back to the very first, I talk about this all the time actually. Go back to the very first Iron Man. The very first Iron Man, before anything happens, right? The very first scene. Remember that? The very first scene in the Humvee, you love Tony Stark like right off the bat. Right off the bat. Before we even get to any action. Before we even know what this movie is about or what the story is, you like Tony Stark. Remember that?
Sir, I have a question to ask.
Yes, please.
Is it true you went 12 for 12 with last year's maximum cover models?
That is an excellent question. Yes and no. March and I had a scheduling conflict, but fortunately the Christmas cover was twins.
Or even Captain America, right? You remember Captain America, before he gets to all of his adventurous stuff or whatever, we get to meet the person of Steve Rogers and what he's going through with all of the army recruiting stuff. That made us love him as a actual hero. It's like, you know, he wasn't even trying to be a hero. He was just trying to do what he thought was the right thing. And that's the thing that made him interesting. Jumps on the grenade, you know, that whole scene. He jumps on the grenade. Everybody else is like, oh shit, I'm getting away from this thing. He's jumping and leaping into action. That showed you the character that he was. They built that character up before they put him on one single adventure. Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. That's what I'm talking about. You can love a character and it doesn't even really matter what the story is after this. We are on board now. We are invested in the character and we'll follow this guy anywhere he goes. Okay? It's like Steve Rogers was the heart and soul of the MCU. Tony Stark was the brains, right? And the two of those guys, hey, we'll go on all the Avenger adventures with these guys. We'll go anywhere with them because we love these characters. And that's what the Marvel Cinematic Universe doesn't have anymore. So, yeah, what Guggenheim is saying is 100% correct when he's talking about the longer a ship sails, the more barnacles get attached to the hull, and the more that weighs down the ship. It's all of these extra characters that don't really do anything, okay? It's just barnacles getting attached to the hull, all right? And they've just gotten weighed down with all of the, you know, again, they're resting on the laurels of all the greater work that they've done in phases 1 through 3. That's the problem with Marvel. This is what this means, okay? You're resting on your laurels. You're not going out there and continuing the great character work that you did in the first couple of phases. All you're doing is just, oh, well, they'll buy it. It's a Marvel, all right? They'll buy it. They'll eat it up, all right? Because it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Just keep pumping crap like She-Hulk out. We'll be just fine. The creator went on to speculate that he believes the upcoming Avengers Secret Wars film will largely serve that goal. My guess is what they are building up with Phase 4 is the Secret Wars that they've announced is not the Secret Wars of the 1980s. That was the good one, in my opinion. It's Jonathan Hickman's Secret Wars, which is basically sort of like a reset of the Marvel Universe. Yeah, I don't know what this reset would end up becoming, you know, based on what they're doing right now. If this is what they're doing with it, if they're going to use Secret Wars to kind of reboot Marvel or reset it in his words. I don't even know what that would look like, honestly, because what do you reset the Marvel Universe to? What would a reboot be? And I guess you would have to say it's the Fantastic Four and X-Men. Obviously, those are the new characters that they're bringing in. But you got to have the Avengers in there somewhere, right? You know, you got to have the Avengers in there. And if you have the Avengers, you're going to need Tony Stark and you're going to need, you know, Steve Rogers, okay? You got not Ironheart and Black Captain America. You're going to need Tony Stark and you're going to need Steve Rogers. To me, that's the Avengers. You know, it's like having the Justice League without Superman and Batman. You know, you got to have Iron Man. You got to have Captain America in their actual iterations, not some spin-off version like Ironheart. Riri Williams is not Tony Stark. I'm sorry. That's just not the way. Nobody's going to buy that. Okay, nobody's going to buy into that. Iger's take on the MCU. As the MCU continues to grow with new characters and stories, many fans have complained that the franchise is becoming too large for its own good. Iger has previously gone on record to say he intends to significantly reduce the number of projects in the cinematic universe's pipeline. The CEO singled out many of the series on Disney Plus, which he says diluted focus and attention. Yeah, we talked about that. I'll link a video above if you didn't see that. But we have discussed that in the past when it comes to the franchise, quote unquote, being too large for its own good. I mean, the MCU has been rolling along for like 15 years now. All right, 15 years. And in that 15 years, if you think about it, if you look at other cinematic universes or other superhero franchises per se, they've all would have been rebooted by now. You know, Batman rebooted after 8 years between 97 and 2005 from, I guess, Joel Schumacher's Batman going into Christopher Nolan's Batman. And then they've rebooted it again because after 2012, when The Dark Knight Rises ended, then they rebooted it into Batfleck. Okay. And now we're dealing with Pattinson with the new one. You know, listen, they would have rebooted by now. Spider-Man would have took no time at all, as you guys know, because they went from the Tobey Maguire, they ended that in 2007, and then they jumped into Andrew Garfield in 2012, and then Spider-Man No Way Home was at 2017. So they have no problem reboot. They'll do it as many times as they need to until they get it right. I think Marvel is kind of getting close to that at this point. Now, what do you do with it? Like I said, do you just bring in the Fantastic Four and the X-Men? I think it's kind of obvious at this point that they probably should have just, say, hey, we're going to put a period after Endgame and say, hey, that phase is done. And then we'll bring in the X-Men, we'll bring in the Fantastic Four, but we'll let the Avengers in the MCU itself, that Marvel Cinematic Universe stuff we were doing, we'll let that sit. We'll let that sit for a while. Let people enjoy that, marinate that. We'll get to work on building these other two up. And then I think you relaunch it and bring the Avengers back, and with a rebooted Tony Stark and a rebooted Steve Rogers. I think that's the only thing that you could do. I know a lot of fans probably wouldn't like that. A lot of folks feel like, oh, no, you got to continue these stories. But it's like, you see what's going on right now. And these actors cannot play these characters for 15, 20, 25 years. It's like, hey, we need a young Tony Stark. Who's this old guy? So eventually you do have to reboot this stuff, as they've done in the comics. They've rebooted characters. Tony Stark is forever, 35, 40 years old. He doesn't get old, not like that. And the same thing with all of these other characters. So, these actors, they can't stay playing young guys forever. I think eventually they're going to reboot the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or at least these characters, these popular characters like Iron Man, like Captain America. They're going to reboot these guys because Disney is about money. It's a cash cow. They want to cash in on it. But the reality is, it's got to go back to the writing, okay? You guys got to write good characters. If you wrote good characters, you wouldn't need to do this. Look, there is plenty, and I mean plenty, to build on that they haven't even touched yet in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and in the DC Universe. Everything doesn't have to circle around Superman and Batman and Spider-Man and Iron Man. It doesn't have to. But what they are going to need to do beyond all of that is there's characters out there that need to be well written. And if you don't write them well, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter how many times you reboot them. You're just going to be rebooting them again and again and again. Anyway, folks, what do y'all think about this situation? I don't think it's going to be a reboot right away, but I do think eventually it's going to come. But you guys go ahead, jump down in the comments, give me your thoughts and opinions on that. Thanks for watching. See you next time.